So what is USAID? When people hear the name USAID, they focus on aid. They focus on thinking like it's humanitarian work. But aid is not actually in the name of USAID. USAID stands for the United States Agency for International Development, not aid. It's not a charity. And international development is simply capacity building. It is local and regional capacity building done across the whole world, i.e. internationally. The primal id in USAID, international development, is about capacity building of assets that can be used by either the Pentagon, the State Department, or the CIA for their own activities. So if you're the Secretary of State and you were asked by the National Security Council or the President to do something in a different country, overthrow their government, stop the passage of a bill in a foreign country's legislature, how would you do that? And the first thing that I said is you would look at the assets that already exist in the country. Do we need new assets in addition to the ones that we currently have, or are the existing assets, can they achieve this simply by giving them enough money, giving them enough resources, giving them enough training, giving them enough support? One of the main ways that capacity building would be financed would be through USAID. USAID would say that it's doing something, funding a hospital system, funding universities, funding civil society organizations, funding media institutions, funding independent media in the region. Sorry, there's something in my eye. Independent media in the region on USAID payroll. And those institutions, those assets, would then be bigger and more powerful and more capable, more capable of serving the State Department's goal, aka advancing U.S. national interests. USAID has a bigger budget than the State Department, over $50 billion. It is a bigger budget than the CIA. The entire intelligence community only has about 72 billion. So that's the CIA plus the 16 others. And USAID has a bigger budget than the CIA and is almost the size of the entire intelligence community combined. That is how important USAID is to American statecraft. It is an intelligence community, a State Department, and a Pentagon assistance organization rolled into one. I just copied this from the USAID website. USAID carries out U.S. foreign policy, advances U.S. national interests, by promoting broad-scale human progress. At the same time, it expands stable, free societies, creates markets and trade partners for the United States, and fosters goodwill abroad. The operative phrases here are carries out U.S. foreign policy. This is not charity work. This is not aid. This is cynical, self-serving purposes. And what is it seeking to do? Free societies, open societies. Why does USAID want other countries to be open societies? Because that's how you get the influence in. If a country is a closed society, they're closed off from USAID influence. We cannot capacity build our assets there. Closed societies box USAID out. China is a closed society. That is why we have not been able to topple the government of China, despite having tried for 100 years now almost. We have not been able to topple Putin from Russia. Why? Because Russia is a closed society. Like China, they kicked USAID out. It is not an open society. And so the USAID can't just take over their entire media ecosystem by funding 100 different media propaganda outlets in the region to sway hearts and minds. And remember, that's what this is. It's hearts and minds and cash. That's what soft power is. They call it hearts and minds work, but it's cash that does the moving of those hearts and minds, especially of the leaders of the movements.
We really did have everything, didn't we? I mean, when you think about it.
What difference at this point does it make?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, a very interesting show and a very interesting time for this country. We've been doing a little bit of research, something we're going to be doing a lot more of here on this program, something that we feel is very much our obligation to you, to help in the exposing of the world crumbling right now, an entire world, a country that you don't even recognize, a country that was flipped against its own founding and against its own people. Infrastructures and systems that are on their dying gasps and just need a little push over the cliff edge to be fully exposed at scale. The outrage from the American public over USAID will be fully exposed on this program. The sick funding of left-wing propaganda groups and the largest criminal fraud in human history will be laid bare for you today, ladies and gentlemen. Tuesday, February 4th, 2025. USAID is dead. And we're going to explain to you why it needed to die, ladies and gentlemen. And now you will understand exactly the depths of the totality of the fifth column that was operating a government wholly and totally outside of your control here in this democracy. What we have found is going to make your skin crawl. It's going to send a shiver down your spine. We're going to show you things you've never seen before on this program. We're going to be joined by Mike Benz, the world's foremost expert on this subject, and the man who has done so much of the exposing himself will bring you new bombshell revelations here. Did you know? Let me just tease this out. Did you know that your own tax dollars were used for the potential destruction and assassination of President Trump? Did you know that you funded it? Did you know that you funded the attempts to put President Trump in prison for 471 years? And that the assassin's bullet that pierced Trump's ear may well have direct connections to our federal government? And you wonder why these screaming demons don't want us to talk about this. You wonder why all of D.C., all Democrats have found one cause to rally around, and that is the salvation of USAID. I look forward to the marches in order to save the CIA soon from the left. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Benny Johnson, and this is The Benny Show. I want to begin this program by just telling you, ladies and gentlemen, about the way that we preserve our wealth on this show. We know that we live in tumultuous times, and that gold is a safe harbor. It is a safe harbor for me. It is something that I use personally in order to make sure that I diversify in times that seem quite inflationary, actually. We're going to talk about an enormous amount of government spending that is totally and completely fraudulent. Remember, for every dollar that the government prints, it lowers the value of your wealth. So, ladies and gentlemen, the government can't print gold. That's why you should invest with gold. My friends can help you do exactly that. Ladies and gentlemen, Advantage Gold is who I trust. They have an A+ from the Better Business Bureau. They've got a free gold investment guide that can help you do exactly this. Protect yourself. Text Benny to 85545 right now to get a free gold investment guide. Plus, when you act now, you can qualify for $1,000 in free silver with your purchase. Text Benny to 85545. Don't miss this opportunity now. Data and message rates apply. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professionals on these kind of things. Okay, we put up a thread this morning. I want to head on over to it because I want to give the floor to Mike Benz. And we have so much to get to here. It's like impossible to carve up this whale carcass, right? You ever seen the whale carcass at the bottom of the ocean? And like, it's so big, like it's such a feast, ladies and gentlemen. There's so many rib bones here to get to. But I want to begin by establishing what USAID is and is not. USAID, you would assume, stands for aid, like we're giving humanitarian aid. Isn't this the people who give tents and loaves of bread to starving children in Africa? And the answer is absolutely not. Not only that, the aid doesn't even stand for aid, it stands for international development. And what does that mean? Well, whenever there is a term like international development from the U.S. state and statecraft departments, you know what that really stands for. It stands for leverage. Leverage of our American taxpayer dollars over another country to meddle in those countries and to project the official policies of the State Department. And what are the official policies of the State Department been for the last, I don't know, my entire life? The official policy of the State Department has been left-wing statecraft, globalism, a wholly unified government, unelected, and outside of the reins of the American taxpayer and the American public. And the perfect distillation of that here is USAID, the single largest criminal fraud operation in human history. Our research over the past 24 hours have exposed fraud that, on a criminal scale, will add up to the largest criminal activity ever recorded. This is why President Trump and Elon Musk shut down USAID. As of right now, the offices have been locked. The building has been completely shuttered. The websites are offline. Even the X account of USAID is gone. Here are just some things that we were able to find. In Haiti, $1.14 billion of your taxpayer money was spent on a power plant that was never built. In Cuba, an audit shows $74 million were spent on democracy promotion. Is Cuba a democracy? The funds completely vanished without any project being developed at all. In Afghanistan, millions were squandered on health scams. Hospitals absolutely never built. Nigeria, a major USAID contractor, was linked to the contractors overbilling hundreds of millions of dollars lost. Never recovered. Nobody ever suffered. COVID-19 funding. USAID spent over $40 million in taxpayer money in order to pay scientists at the Wuhan laboratory to develop dangerous gain-of-function molecules, including additions of spike proteins into coronaviruses to make them transmissible to human beings, and to eventually loose COVID-19 on the earth. USAID has funded biolabs around the world. We haven't even gotten to the biolabs currently existing in Ukraine, also funded by USAID. Remember how Hunter Biden worked on biolabs contracts in Ukraine? Guess where that money came from? A $2.5 million deal in Serbia for DEI. A $70,000 deal for an Irish DEI musical. $47,000 on transgender operas in Colombia and $32,000 on trans comic books in Peru. $20 million for an Iraqi version of Sesame Street to promote alphabet agendas. Egypt and Tunisia, $56 million for tourism. Why would we be funding another country's tourism? Jordan, $40 million for schools. Vietnam, $11 million to fight trash burning. Central America, $27 million to deportees for gift bags. Let me say that again. We're paying tens of millions of dollars for gift bags for the people we deport. And this one's very important. And it's one that I'm going to talk about with Mike Benz. Because we go on and on and on this program about Soros prosecutors. George Soros prosecutors. And you know what? I'm not going to apologize for that. It's true. George Soros does fund prosecutors, but not nearly as much as USAID funding a specific left-wing nonprofit specifically for the election of and the prosecution of populist candidates via left-wing prosecutors targeting Donald Trump, but not limited to Donald Trump. Populists around the world who have been prosecuted by left-wing lawfare. It is all funded, centralized, and organized by USAID. The entire censorship apparatus that we saw visited upon the entire internet was a product of USAID and an organization that had 7 former CIA heads sitting on it. This is the skeleton key to left-wing lawfare, censorship, persecution, prosecution, assassination, and this is key, and this is what matters the very most. This is what we will snap on this program. And this is what we are about to expose, ladies and gentlemen, with Mike Benz. What's happening here is that the vast majority of this money is not going to, for instance, $40 million in schools for Jordan, or tourism for Tunisia, or hospitals in Nigeria. This money is staying right here in America, much like the money for Ukraine. Zelensky recently did a press conference where he said, I don't know where at least $100 billion went. America sent us, according to the reports, America sent us $180 billion. We've seen 70 of that. So there's $100 billion missing. Where'd it go? Zelensky says, live on tape. You know exactly where it went. This is how the Democrat Party funds itself. You ever wonder how these large, influential Democrat groups are able to mobilize all of these orcs in our streets, are able to seemingly pay for all of the protests and all of the lawfare and to sue every second of the day? They're suing a Republican, they're suing somebody, they're bringing a lawsuit against Elon Musk or Alex Jones or whoever. Donald Trump, 100 million lawsuits every second of the day. Here's Zelensky, just in case you were wondering. The entire thing's in Ukrainian, so it's just worth putting up. Here you go. Zelensky, I don't know where 100 billion of the dollars that were supposed to go to Ukraine went. Well, I'll tell you where it went. Into the coffers of left-wing groups in order to suppress our movement, a populist movement here in America. Let me unlock something for you. Nobody actually supports leftists. Yes, of course, there is a gray-haired, unhappy, super overly medicated wine mom cat lady. All right? I say wine mom. She's probably childless. Her cat's her child. She's like hopped up on SSRIs, and she believes everything that the machine tells her, okay? She believes the message. Yes, those people exist. But those people are the vast minority in this country. They wouldn't be able to put together a cohesive political movement. They wouldn't be able to stand on their own. And most of the time, they're impoverished or on welfare. They live off state subsidies. They can't astroturf a political movement. These people aren't going to be, don't have the capacity to like properly fund these massive Antifa, BLM, Black Bloc, left-wing, lawfare movements. This stuff takes cash and money, resources, and institutional power. And ladies and gentlemen, that's what's been destroyed here. Go to the USAID.gov website, please. I want to show the people. USAID.gov. Gone. Here's from the White House, ladies and gentlemen, today, showing exactly how deep the waste runs. Again, virtually none of these projects were actually completed. None of them were built. None of them were real. What's actually happening here is money laundering. And that money goes into fighting Donald Trump and Republicans and electing Democrats, Democrat prosecutors. By getting rid of these funds, and the way that these funds are hidden effectively is you say, we're building schools in Nigeria. Okay, maybe people are for that. I'm not for that at all. Not until every school in America is 100% safe and that every kid in America has a perfect and excellent education. Am I for funding schools in Nigeria? I'm not for that. But maybe some like limp-wristed people and some weak-spined people get pushed over and say, okay, yeah, maybe we should fund Nigeria. It doesn't fund schools in Nigeria. It goes to Bethesda, Maryland, into dark LLCs, into the organs of the Democrat Party, and then Democrats launder that money into left-wing agitation here in America. Give me the president of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele's tweet, please, from yesterday. I believe it's in the script. No, that's on the prison reform. By the way, we were right. Just want to let you know, we were right. Yeah, we told you what was going to happen. If you were watching this program, just a little feather in the cap. If you were watching this program 2 weeks ago, we told you what was about to happen. We told you that El Salvador was about to announce that they would be allowing America to send all of their prisoners to El Salvador for a small fee. We told you this. And we were 2 weeks ahead of the news cycle. This is, ladies and gentlemen, why we are thankful that you watch and we do our job here. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is our job, to explain to you how this all works. From the leader of El Salvador. Most governments don't want USAID funds flowing into their countries because they understand that this money doesn't actually go to what they say it's going to go to. While marked for support of development or democracy or human rights, the majority of the funds are funneled into opposition groups, NGOs, political agendas, and destabilizing movements. At best, maybe 10% of the money reaches real projects that help people in need. There are such cases, but the rest is used to fuel dissent, finance protests, and undermine administrations that refuse to align with the globalist agenda. Cutting this so-called aid isn't just beneficial for the United States, it's beneficial for the rest of the world. This is how they were using these funds in small countries like El Salvador. They were doing the same thing here. This was a massive money laundering operation for the left wing to channel that cash into the election of Democrats and globalists and the funding of protests against President Trump, the funding of lawfare against President Trump, and even an assassin's bullet, ladies and gentlemen. This is the scam. Why are they losing their minds about it right now? Why are they raging? I mean, yesterday you had an entire mob of left-wing Democrat politicians at the front of USAID in Washington, D.C. Get me the B-roll. In Washington, D.C., screaming and yelling and hollering. Why this? Well, gives up the game. They were planning on this funding being untouched. They were expecting the systems as usual to operate with President Trump, and that Doge and Elon Musk would not actually be going for this aid, because who could stand against funding of schools in Nigeria, right? Shut up, limp dick Republicans. Just go along with it. We're just going to fund a school in Nigeria, right? Now, where that $50 million actually ends up is, of course, in the pockets of Democrat politicians. Here you have Ilhan Omar, Jamie Raskin, various other members of the Democrat Party, including Chuck Schumer, who's been mewling and bitching on about this. You've never seen anything. You've never seen them so upset. You've never seen them so enraged. This means we're over the target, ladies and gentlemen. Ilhan Omar saying, without USAID, I would never even be in America. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Ilhan Omar hates this country, is sympathetic to the 9/11 hijackers, has called for the total and complete defunding of the police in America, committed mass immigration fraud to bring her genocidal war criminal family over here. Do you believe that Ilhan Omar is somebody who is the exact product that USAID wants in Congress? I think that is a shining, glaring billboard as to why this organ must be shut down. And that kind of reveals the whole game here, right? Bring somebody who hates this country, a devoted Marxist, over to America, implant her into this community of weak, limp liberals, right, in Minneapolis, elect her to Congress, and then you've effectively stolen a seat. Then you have an apparatchik to go out and to do your bidding. And this is how USAID operated. It operated as a fifth column, wholly and totally outside of the United States government, to sabotage the actual legitimate population, voting, democracy of this country. And the reason why they're losing their effing minds over this is because they were planning on this funding going untouched. Nobody ever looking into it. And they were going to use these massive pots of money to fight Trump. And now Trump has removed the little honeypot. This was your taxpayer dollars, of course. There are not enough left-wing billionaires in the world. This is why it was such a genius move by Donald Trump to swoop in and take over Silicon Valley, to take the money pots away from the left and at the very least, like, have them neutralized on the sideline. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we've uncovered. Marco Rubio this morning stating precisely what's been going on at USAID. Rubio this morning, who is the new Secretary of State, he's now the new acting head of USAID. It hasn't been totally and completely atomized. It's just been put under his purview. Virtually everybody's been locked out of their computers. Everyone's been locked out of their office. Rubio saying this organization was acting entirely outside of the federal government. This was a globalist intelligence agency masquerading with the patina of a humanitarian agency that was undermining the will of the American people, the demands of the American people. Bombshell stuff. Here we go.
You're now the head of USAID. The head of Doge, Elon Musk, called USAID a criminal organization and added that it is time for it to die. Do you agree with that?
They have basically evolved into an agency that believes that they're not even a U.S. government agency, that they are a global charity, that they take the taxpayer money and they spend it as a global charity, irrespective of whether it is in the national interest or not in the national interest. One of the most common complaints you will get if you go to embassies around the world from State Department officials and ambassadors and the like is USAID is not only not cooperative, they undermine the work that we're doing in that country. They are supporting programs that upset the host government for whom we're trying to work with on a broader scale and so forth. So they're completely unresponsive. They just don't consider that they work for the U.S. They just think they're a global entity and that their master is the globe and not the United States. And that's not what the statute says, and that's not sustainable.
Can it be reformed or does it need to die?
Well, that was always the goal, was to reform it. But now we have rank insubordination. Now we have basically an active effort where their basic attitude is we don't work for anyone. We work for ourselves. No agency of government can tell us what to do. So the president made me the acting administrator. I've delegated that power to someone who's there full time, and we're going to go through the same process at USAID as we're going through now at the State Department. I think there are some, this is not about getting rid of foreign aid. There are things that we do through USAID that we should continue to do that makes sense. And we'll have to decide, is that better through the State Department or is that better through something, a reformed USAID? That's the process we're working through. There are things that are happening at USAID that we should not be involved in funding, or that we have a lot of questions about. But they're completely uncooperative. So we had no choice but to take dramatic steps to bring this thing under control.
Do you think that...
This is your own Secretary of State saying this was a government outside of our government. This was operating not as an American institution, but as a globalist institution. To overthrow governments, to censor, to kill, to destabilize. This was an organization undermining our actual democracy and the American people. President Trump has, in this swift manner, gutted the true heart of darkness of the enemy. By taking away this funding, the screaming, the wailing, the shrieking of the corporate media and the left, you can understand the totality of the weapon that has been destroyed by President Trump that they were planning to use against him. And nay, I say, they did use against him for the better part of the last decade of his political life, and probably used against the American people for my entire life, the last 40 years. USAID has been used to undermine Americans, populist candidates, and to fill the coffers, line the pockets, and to astroturf left-wing causes. They have no other way to get money. This fraud is how they were able to fund the lawfare against Donald Trump, to fund the lawfare against populist candidates around the globe, to pay for all these prosecutors, all these insane prosecutions. This was the kitty. This was the piggy bank. Very quickly here, ladies and gentlemen, from inside of USAID, here's the panic. I talked to a friend who had connections within the Democrat Party and said the level of panic for Trump and Elon shutting down USAID is unlike anything they've ever seen. By following the money, Doge has struck a killing blow to the heart of the Democrat deep state machine. Direct quote, "This is worse than 9/11 for Democrats. USAID is the primary vessel they use to achieve their political agenda. USAID has always been the primary source of funding for their influence peddling schemes and interdict sources of income. Another text. Based on the reactions from the party, it seems to be that dismantling USAID is Trump's biggest political victory to date. It was his enemy's golden goose. Same source told me that during the campaign, well before it was made public, Kamala's internal polling was behind Trump. So this information is good. It's rock solid. Another important addition. He says the initial plans by the Democrats is to have their people at USAID hide partisan funding under unimpeachable initiatives. Remember, schools in Nigeria, right? For little poor kids. They will push back really hard on certain line items that look reasonable, like USAID expenditures, to hide their political spending under these programs. The entire thing needs to be thrown out to avoid this from happening. Another likely solution for the Democrats is they use USAID funding to reward VIPs, NGOs as an intermediary to direct funds where they want them to go. So basically, USAID funds certain initiatives, schools in Nigeria, that look reasonable. Democrat-friendly NGO is contracted to carry out the initiative. Please go build schools in Nigeria. NGO subcontracts a VIP, Bill Clinton, with another NGO operated by a political ally, George Soros. Eventually, these funds reach the secret intended target, and the original problem is not solved. No schools were built, but all the lawfare against Donald Trump was funded. Elon Musk was sued 50 times using these funds. This means they can continue to rinse and repeat the grift. If Elon and Trump want to stick this where it really hurts, they need to completely shut down USAID, fire all of the staff. The party has instructed their allies not to make waves and to blend in. USAID is 99% Democrats. 97% of USAID funding went to Democrat causes. 97%. This was it. This was the skeleton key to unlocking the golden goose for how all of these black bloc agitations, lawfare, Antifa, censorship, all of these left-wing orgs, the World Economic Forum, all of it was funded. And now they're screaming. Ladies and gentlemen, before we get to Mike Benz, something very important. A report from a USAID employee about what it was like when Doge took over. Literally the burning of the Reichstag. They had to they announced that Doge was in the building like the Gestapo was raiding. They were burning files. They were ripping paintings off the wall, photos, hiding flags. It's a totally and wholly corrupt government that was being run here. It cannot be overstated. Here we go.
But Elon Musk's influence is sweeping throughout the administration. It was late last week that the Doge team showed up at USAID offices in Washington and demanded access. USAID employee Christina Dry described the scene.
Doge was in the building. We took down our pride flags. I took out any books I felt would be incriminating. No one was talking. We heard they started taking transcripts automatically of all of our Google Meets. They unplugged the news in the little kitchen galleys. It didn't feel good. And then Saturday, all of the websites went down, and then I lost complete access to my computer.
Wow, look at that. That's the quality of the activists that is currently running your federal government. We had to rip down all of our pride flags. President Trump, very quickly on what USAID actually was. Short, sweet, and to the point.
The first term, though, USAID was something that you liked in some respects.
I love the concept of it.
Had some programs.
Sure. I love the concept, but they turned out to be radical left lunatics. And the concept of it is good, but it's all about the people.
Mr. President.
Radical left-wing lunatics. Ladies and gentlemen, there's been only one man screaming out of the wilderness about this, long before anyone would listen. There's been one man who has decided to make this his cause de triomphe, who began telling the world about USAID back when there would have been massive political, personal, financial, and professional repercussions. And he doesn't talk about it much, but Mike Benz suffered all of those repercussions for standing against this globalist behemoth, the heart of darkness at the center of the deep state. That man is now completely and totally vindicated, and he's on the show live, bringing the receipts. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mike Benz. Mike, you've got to be the single happiest and most vindicated man possibly to ever live on this planet. I'm proud of you, buddy. And what an incredible day.
It sure is. I'd like to say happy is the word, but it's also very heavy. And there's a weight of history, and I hope folks appreciate the historical magnitude of what's happening, and also appreciate the weight of the task of carrying this through to completion. What we're doing right now is open heart surgery on the entire structure of the American empire and the American foreign policy establishment. And it's essential that as we do this, we don't kill the patient in the process, or accidentally glob on, 3 arms where the heart should have been. This has to be done well. It has to be done intelligently. We do have to have this wrecking ball moment, but it's imperative that folks in Trump world at the top of our foreign policy establishment now have, their eyes are open about what USAID really is, and so they can make intelligent decisions about how to actually restructure its work as they go about the process of chopping down this tree.
Okay, so let's start from the very tip top. So you went viral this weekend by exposing that USAID prosecutors, not Soros prosecutors, were the ones behind President Trump's political persecution in the courts. Can you please unpack that? Because I think that's something that's going to strike kind of at the heart of the issue here, which is that USAID was not about providing aid for starving people in Africa. It was actually about statecraft, and it was about usurping and using malign tools in order to craft the political outcomes that were desirous of a globalist regime. And the Trump prosecutions, I think, are just a perfect centerpiece for all of this. Can you unpack that to start off with, Mike?
Yes. Now, let me be clear that money, I think that Mario tweet was well intentioned. It slightly missed the mark in the sense that the technical.
We'll get your tweet up. Yes, get Mike's tweet.
The technical distinction here is that the money went to the fiscal sponsor of the group controlling Soros prosecutors, and there's bleed over between the fiscal sponsor and the 501c3 project. See, Soros funds 30% now at this point. 30% of America's population lives under Soros prosecutors in all the big cities. And not only do they fund the campaigns, but they also fund the NGOs that direct the prosecutors in terms of who to prosecute, who not to prosecute, what laws to enforce and not enforce. These NGOs even write the prosecutors press release statements, social media posts, meet with them on daily and weekly bases in order to essentially, have a rent a prosecutor at their disposal to weaponize the criminal justice system. And so the main group that does that, the main Soros group that does that, is called Fair and Just Prosecutions, FJP. Now, FJP is a 501c3, but not directly. It's a project of a group called the Tide Center. The Tide Center is also the central clearinghouse for Black Lives Matter, for what it's worth. And when you understand USAID's role in racial rent-a riots, that will make a lot more sense to you as to why that is. But USAID paid the Tide Center, which is, again, gives the Soros Prosecutor Control Group, its 501c3, $27 million in one grant alone. And in that grant description, it deputizes the Tide Center to, quote, solicit concrete commitments from foreign governments. Basically, USAID goes out and pays this group to act as a shadow diplomacy to secure commitments from foreign governments to the U.S. government. So and this is classic USAID stuff to control domestic politics. What they do is they fund international organizations who then turn around and use that money to manipulate domestic politics. So that's how USAID gets away with it. They keep this firewall. They say, well, we're not funding them to do work in America. We're funding them to do work abroad. But now you've pumped them up on steroids with all this money. And now they're these big, bad, powerful organizations that simultaneously operate domestically. Now, this is classic stuff, but it gets a lot worse than that. I mean, USAID, first of all, is in the business of controlling prosecutors. Let me give you one example, okay? So there's a project called the OCC. It's got a long name. You can just think of it as the Corruption Reporting Project, CRP. And what USAID, and people are going to find, I've been down about it for years, but USAID controls an unbelievable portion of the world's media. Say it again.
Hey, Mike, your audio just clicked off. So your microphone, I don't think, is picking up correctly. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to move you into the green room. We're going to work with our producers to get your mic back up and working. Hold on just a second. Here we go. All right, he's just going to have to reconnect his mic, but ladies and gentlemen, this is obviously something that we're going to want to hear from Mike Benz. Here's Caroline Leavitt at the White House explaining where this money was going yesterday in a bombshell clip. This is a full court press against USAID from the administration. Let's go.
You're watching live coverage.
Through USAID over the past several years, these are some of the insane priorities that organization has been spending money on. $1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces, $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. I don't know about you, but as an American taxpayer, I don't want my dollars going towards this crap, and I know the American people don't either, and that's exactly what Elon Musk has been tasked by President Trump to do, to get the fraud, waste, and abuse out of our federal government. Thank you, guys.
Viewers and the public audience, but it was important.
So, ladies and gentlemen, the White House is taking direct aim at this organization. As we fix Mike Benz's audio, we will show you exactly how many people have been listening to Mike Benz. Mike Benz has been a one-man wrecking crew against USAID. Here's Elon Musk explaining what his Doge operation is doing right now inside the building.
As we dug into USAID, it became apparent that what we have here is not an apple with a worm in it, but we have actually just a bowl of worms. And so at the point at which you don't merely, like if you've got an apple and it's got a worm in it, maybe you can take the worm out. But if you've got actually just a bowl of worms, it's hopeless. And USAID is a bowl of worms. Mm-hmm. There is no apple. And when there is no apple, you've just got to basically get rid of the whole thing. That is why it's got to go. You know, it's beyond repair. So, yeah.
Well.
It is a bowl of worms beyond repair. Ladies and gentlemen, some man who helped expose that bowl of worms joining us back again. Mike, how are we? Good?
Good. Can you hear me?
There we go. Yes, I'm so sorry. You just went completely mute right in the middle of what you were saying. Okay, so let's hop back in.
We were talking about prosecutors and media and USAID's role in controlling both of those. I don't know when the mic evidently went mute, but
the mic went mute right as you were talking about how they fund international organs, they hop them up on steroids in order to influence domestic policy in the United States.
Okay. USAID is in the business, and heavy in the business, of controlling prosecutors and controlling media. It will shock the American people the proportion of global media that is controlled by, because it's sponsored by, USAID. It will also shock the American population when they find out how many of the world's prosecutors are effectively being manipulated or controlled by USAID. And a great example of this, because we are on the topic of how USAID's foreign money spigot is weaponized against domestic politics and domestic citizens. And crazy example of this is this group that I was beginning to mention called the OCCRP, the Corruption Reporting Project, which is the world's largest consortium of investigative journalists. These are the folks who broke the Panama Papers and a whole host of other scandals, which they conveniently only get access to because of leaked documents or hacked documents. While they're on the payroll of the CIA, they get access to the internal files of basically every enemy of the State Department's computers, which is a amazing coincidence if you think about it. But the Corruption Reporting Project gets half of its budget from USAID, and USAID gets editorial control. Effectively, they get control of hiring and firing who the Corruption Reporting Project can bring on. The Corruption Reporting Project has to submit an annual report to them before the year starts about what sort of things they're going to report on. And what they sicked them on doing was digging up dirt on Paul Manafort and his connection to Julian Assange. They wrote a false news story in order to tar President Trump and as a Russian asset and working with WikiLeaks. That was funded by USAID. Most horrendously, they targeted Rudy Giuliani. So USAID sponsored a group of hit piece journalists to dig up dirt on Rudy Giuliani, and that dirt was then used as the basis for the impeachment in 2019. It was entered into the record during the 2019 Ukraine impeachment because USAID sicked its sponsored hit piece journalists to dig up dirt on Rudy Giuliani's work in Ukraine, which they then tied to Trump in order to have him be impeached by Congress. So USAID was at war with Donald Trump and Trumpism and Trump's nationalist policy, both at home and abroad. And so what they did is they funded these dark arts, just the same way the CIA was in the 20th century would pay journalists to write hit pieces. That is now done by USAID. And in fact, in the USAID report on this program, they have an accomplishments section where they list all of the people. They brag that they got 456 people arrested because of CRP's hit pieces and the flow of those hit pieces to prosecutors. That is USAID bragging in their accomplishments section about paying journalists to get 456 people arrested, to get over $1 billion of assets seized. They bragged about the return on investment, that paying these hit piece journalists $20 million netted them over $1 billion in assets seized from the targets of the hit pieces. They even bragged that these hit piece journalists that they sponsored toppled world governments. They claimed that these hit pieces got, I think, 7 different major government officials to resign, including a president and a prime minister. And they also bragged about dozens of arrests that were done, that were achieved because of this. That is, hit pieces for hire in order to give prosecutors ammunition to arrest USAID's political enemies all over Central and Eastern Europe, all over Western Hemisphere, and most damningly in the United States of America itself.
So you brought the domestic international. And this is something that I was dying to ask you, Mike. Brazil, the lawfare against Jair Bolsonaro. The lawfare in France against populist leaders. The lawfare all across Eastern Europe against populist leaders. It all seems to be happening right now in coordination. And the charges are quite similar, even in Pakistan against Imran Khan. The charges all seem to be copy and pasted, and they all seem to be brought at exactly the same time as, of course, populist leaders rise to power, and there is a movement around the globe for more nationality and more national defense. How coordinated is that lawfare through USAID? Is there any connection?
Benny, USAID has a concept, an internal doctrinal concept called transitional justice, which is the idea that you need to arrest people when you topple a government. When you narrowly win an election, you immediately use the criminal justice system to arrest the people from the former government. USAID has something called the Office of Transition Initiatives, which helps coordinate that. Transition means a transition from one government to the next. So literally in the process of taking over a country's government, they weaponize the criminal justice system. They pay all of the groups around the prosecutors and and gamify exactly how to get the prosecutors to take these steps, including through what I just mentioned, the Corruption Reporting Project, and USAID bragging that they got all these people arrested through that. They also fund the groups that lobby the prosecutors' associations. For example, they did that in Brazil. USAID did, but that's not like a random one-off isolated thing they do from time to time. It's a doctrinal concept. Everyone can look this up. Go to Google and type in transitional justice. It means means arrest. It means you arrest the USAID's enemies in the region. And you work with the prosecutors, you work with the media to devastate and isolate and demonize them, also to dig up dirt that can be used as the basis for criminal investigations. The rabbit hole on this goes so deep and so dark that I think a lot of people need to take a long walk and stare wistfully on a train ride 1,000 yards away to really internalize just how much of a Truman Show you have been living in with the people you think you know and the institutions you think you know really being a front for USAID.
I mean, this seems criminal. In it, like prima facie, that there are crimes that are right now being committed inside of USAID, and that everything from money laundering, which the Doge Group has been pretty front-facing about, $50 million to schools in Nigeria, but all the money ends up in Bethesda, Maryland. Not a single school gets built. And there's somebody that's going to be left holding the bag in that money laundering scheme. Clearly, there's no legal basis for USAID to be funding the imprisonment of populist candidates around the world who lose in very narrow, very, very suspicious elections like Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil.
I wish that were the case. And I'll leave the criminal aspect of it to folks at the Justice Department and folks who specialize in criminal law. My concern is frankly the inverse of that, which is that these are authorized crimes in the same way that the intelligence community and the FBI are able to conduct what are called authorized crimes. That is, they have a blank check from the Justice Department. They have pre-clearance to engage in this because it's considered essential to U.S. national security or advancing U.S. national interest. For example, informants who conducting authorized crimes here in the U.S. There's like $500 million from the FBI alone. Virtually everything the CIA does in terms of working with oligarchs, crooked oligarchs, working with warlords, working with paramilitaries, working with terrorist groups, involves authorized crimes. And my concern is that USAID has been operating under this cloak with the Justice Department, and their operations have been greenlit through these secular channels at Justice. Because they are said to advance U.S. national interests. Of course, they don't. They advance the interests of a very small insular crew of U.S. elites who are the same people who have sought to imprison Donald Trump and destroy any attempt to make this country great again. But the fact is, and I stress this point because the urge to just take everything down at USAID, I totally agree with as a first step. But what you're going to quickly find is that USAID, and I hate to say this, but they are, I begrudgingly acknowledge that they are good at their job in the sense that if their job is to take down the people that they are deputized to in order to advance U.S. national interest, that is, in order to oust foreign governments. For example, you can credit USAID with toppling the governments of Tunisia and Egypt during the Arab Spring. You can credit them with toppling the government of Brazil in 2022. You can credit them with toppling the government of Bangladesh just 4 months ago in 2024.
What about Ukraine in 2014?
Unbelievable. Their role in Ukraine in 2014 was they provided the lion's share of that $5 billion that Victoria Nuland bragged about 2 months before the coup. That is, they capacity built these right sector Maidan Square, student groups and protest movements. In fact, one of the things that I broke a year ago, but I put it back on X this week, was U.S. Special Forces training documents from Mark Milley and Joe Biden's tenure. This is the 2021 Special Forces vision statement prospectus, their strategic planning manual, which showed that when they organized race riots in Africa, they use USAID job fairs to provide no-show salaries to protesters so that they can go on strike and quit their jobs and still get paid, because USAID is paying them the money so that they can afford to leave their factory jobs to riot in the streets against their governments. And so USAID works not just with state, but they and not just with intelligence, but they work directly with the U.S. military. And in fact, one of these DOD reports from 2022 has a quote from a three-star general saying that he prefers to work with USAID over the State Department because, quote, USAID actually does stuff. They're the ones who are actually on the ground building the institutions that the military can work with. And so we need to do this smart. Like I said, this is open heart surgery, and Trump wants to win on foreign policy. Trump has designs for his plans in Europe, his designs for plans in Africa, where we get critical minerals, designs for plans in Western Hemisphere and Central Asia. And what you're going to find is that USAID is the arm for carrying out foreign policy, but it's gone rogue. But we're going to need to synchronize that with its new home at state, and that's going to be a whole other task. If I can just say one other thing, the analogy that I give here is Brexit. We all celebrated, in June 2016, when Nigel Farage pulled off that epic moment with Brexit against the full weight of world media and even the U.S. State Department trying to stop it, and the censorship and the demonization. But the fact is Brexit, as Farage himself acknowledges, did not really achieve the intended goals because of all the different layers of warfare in terms of implementing it. And you're going to find that same thing happen here. You shut down USAID and you move it to state. State just inherits a USAID herpes infection. It does not end USAID. You're going to need to manage that and do it very, very delicately.
Can we look into something in very recent history? And we talk about the lawfare against President Trump, but I would argue that the COVID-19 pandemic was the most damaging thing to ever happen to President Trump or his first term, without question, and possibly the most damaging thing to happen to the world in recent memory. $40 million from USAID through EcoHealth Alliance, directly tied to the Wuhan Virology Laboratory. But also there's more biolab funding in USAID, some having connections with Hunter Biden and Ukraine. Can you please unlock that for us, Mike? Because as you're talking about the dangers of this organization and what may still be metastasizing as herpes, as you put it, how do you shut down those programs? One, what are those programs intended to do in the first place? I'm not sure why we're funding biolabs, why that's USAID role. And then two, how do you kill that? How do you shut that down?
So one of the training exercises I would do for my ex-subscribers when we would pull up USAID grants is we would examine what the grant says and have people make a guess or determination about which role USAID is playing with the grant program. Because USAID is a switch player that toggles between assisting the State Department on foreign policy goals, the Defense Department on national security and military goals, and the Central Intelligence Agency in intelligence work. And so when you see a USAID grant, let me say this again, I've said it 1,000 times, in the past weekend alone, but there's not a single honest USAID program on God's green earth. Everything USAID does is a lie. And so when you see a USAID grant, you know it's a lie, but you don't know exactly the source of the lie. You don't know if they're lying to provide a covert operation on behalf of the State Department. You don't know if they're lying on behalf of a covert operation for DOD, or you don't know if they're lying because they're providing a covert operation as a liaison to the CIA. But you know it's one of those three. And my concern over the vaccine issues that you just you just mentioned, and their role in funding gain of function research, which is nominally done so that you can create a vaccine against freakazoid monster viruses, is that the CIA has played a really interesting role in vaccine diplomacy, and as has the State Department. Henry Kissinger in 2000 wrote a book talking about how American soft power has to radically upscale its role in public health interventions because they have proven successful in the 1990s to get the United States access to populations under a humanitarian cloak that we could not do under a military or diplomatic cover. And he gives examples in Yugoslavia during the Bosnia War and the breakup of Yugoslavia in 1995 and 1999. He gives the example of Haiti, and there's about 7 or 8 countries that he mentions there. I've posted all about this on X. And public health facilities and public health programs provide the perfect cover for that. And that's not my quote, by the way. That's USAID's quote. USAID in 2014 was busted running a fake HIV prevention program that served as the cover for undercover intelligence agents to recruit people to try to overthrow their government. Basically, they were operating this web of HIV prevention clinics, and then getting everyone in the clinic and running resources out of this in order to create a critical component of people to take to the streets to overthrow their government. This was busted by counterintelligence, and USAID had to come clean about it. It was a massive scandal. But the question is, if they were doing that with HIV prevention programs in Cuba and in other parts of Western Hemisphere, how many other public health facilities that USAID is running? How many other vaccine programs or public health programs is USAID running that are actually intelligence operations in the background? I would wager virtually every single one. And let me express another concern. And I mentioned this last night and in a few private live streams previously, but I'm going to keep banging it until someone takes note of it. There was a major scandal in 2011 where the CIA was busted running fake vaccination drives and fake vaccination clinics in Pakistan. This was a major, major diplomatic incident for the United States. Again, the CIA was collecting the biometrics of people in Pakistan under the cover of vaccination clinics and vaccination drives. And when the CIA got busted doing this, it was a major scandal. Pakistan kicked him out of the country, banned vaccine programs in the country. It took 16 months for the CIA after that scandal to write a letter, a pinky promise, non-binding, not under oath, no criminal punishments if they violate it, letter saying that they will no longer use vaccine clinics or vaccine drives as the cover for doing CIA work. Okay, 16 months of dragging them, 16 months of holding out, of reluctant, didn't want to do it. And they finally wrote a non-binding letter that they won't do it. Well, guess what? USAID is CIA, and USAID is not even under the pretense of that letter. I have a question. Hey, when the CIA in 2013 said that they're no longer going to do CIA work out of their vaccination clinics and vaccine drives, did USAID take the baton? Is USAID just doing it? And hey, guess what? Who was the top recipient of USAID funds last year? Gavi, the vaccine consortium under Bill Gates. So everything USAID is doing in this space, from funding the Wuhan lab and the CIA role in COVID. Of course, Avril Haines, who was deputy director of the CIA, you played a key role in Event 201, which was the COVID simulator where they magically knew that a bat-based coronavirus was going to come out of China, and they had a worldwide simulation sponsored by the Gates Foundation, the Johns Hopkins Biosecurity Lab, and the World Economic Forum. But what was the deputy director of the CIA doing? Coaching that whole room on the best way to censor the internet to stop conspiracy theories about man-made origins of a pending outbreak that would shut down the entire world just 2 months later. What was this? What were CIA and Pentagon front groups like the Atlantic Council and Graphica doing first to descend on the internet to censor all claims about COVID as being a man-made virus, while USAID was providing the funding in tandem with DARPA to actually create the basis for a spreadable bat-based coronavirus and the SARS-CoV-2, the inferring cleavage cell biological basis for creating that strain. So the fact is USAID is CIA in that respect, and CIA has to manage biosecurity affairs when you're talking about these cloak and dagger things. And so it's very easy for them to weld an offensive weapon under the cloak of needing a defense against offense.
The rabbit hole does go deep, doesn't it, Mike? What are the what are some of the things that will shock people the most? Because I believe we're just at the tip of the iceberg here, and we finally reached at scale with USAID. Now it is mainstream. The White House is talking about it. The White House webpage just put up a fact sheet on USAID right now. You're seeing Democrats, of course, rally in the street to protect USAID. Glenn Greenwald saying, soon to come, the Democrat marches in favor of the CIA, right? It's like we're seeing now the agitation be created in order to try and defend USAID. One of the Vindman brothers trying to get into the building, Ilhan Omar saying she wouldn't be in America if it weren't for USAID. Not sure if that's the single greatest advertisement for shutting it down. But here we have the final cumulus point, nexus point for Democrats to unite around. Chuck Schumer going just hollering at the wind, screaming on social media about that. This was clearly the target. This is clearly the skeleton key to unlocking the apparatus that has been funding global leftism for quite a while in this country. And so, what must happen next in order to stop that from happening? What would be your advice to Elon Musk and the Trump administration? And two, are we even going to see a global left-wing movement as we've known it for the last 20 years without USAID? I mean, is this it?
So I know that's a very tempting framing, and I'm not disagreeing with it. The fact is 97% of employee contributions at USAID went to Democrats. Democrats do make up the lion's share by far of grantee money. But my main concern is actually not the Democrats in the USAID story. My main concern is the Republicans. And let me explain why. So USAID is the funding arm, but the operations arm of much of USAID work is the National Endowment for Democracy, which has two sister groups that it houses, one for Democrats, one for Republicans. NDI is the National Democratic Institute, is the Democrat one. Hunter Biden was on the chairman's advisory board of that, incidentally. And IRI, the International Republican Institute, is the Republican one. And they get approximately equal funding. And much of USAID work redounds to the benefit of legacy Republican donors and stakeholders, from the energy companies to the Chamber of Commerce companies. You know, when Victoria Nuland was bragging in December 2013 about the $5 billion that USAID had flooded into Ukrainian civil society that would then later be credited with taking down the Ukrainian government and installing a Victoria Nuland hand-picked new president. When she made that speech, she was standing in front of she was at a sponsored event, jointly sponsored by Exxon and Chevron. Exxon and Chevron are legacy Republican stalwarts. In fact, it was the chairman of the board of ExxonMobil who was Donald Trump's first Secretary of State before Mike Pompeo, Rex Tillerson. And so what you will, my concern, listen, if this was just a Democrat-Republican thing, there'd be no issue at all shutting this down, because a Republican-controlled House and a Republican-controlled Senate would be highly incentivized to simply shut down the agency entirely. There'd be, not only would it, redound to U.S. national interests in their view, but even in a pure, cynical, self-serving fashion, they'd shut down the money spigot for the Democrats. But you're going to find that is not going to be an easy task, because the critical component of internationalist Republicans, of blob Republicans that are on the take of USAID, or their constituent corporations are, or their major donors are, the size of that rabbit hole, I think, will shock the American people. And my concern is those blob Republicans will form a coalition bloc with Democrats in order to stop Congress from shutting down USAID. You know, all it takes is a handful of senators in order to block that from happening. We're running into this same issue when it comes to Senate confirmation of Tulsi Gabbard and potentially other Trump nominees. But in that case, that's not doing direct damage to the economics of those senators and congressmen. USAID shutting that down will. That is going to be a much harder fight. And I'm urging people, especially people who are conservative or Republican, to pay while you're watching Chuck Schumer and the Vindman brothers parade outside of USAID headquarters. I want you to pay very special attention to the Republicans who voice opposition to this, because that is going to open up a rabbit hole about the historical construction of the Republican Party, the same Republican Party that led the January 6th committee, crucifixion of Donald Trump, the Liz Cheney wing, the Adam Kinzinger wing, the Bush CIA family clan, and that is where the pressure has to be most acutely applied in terms of commitments to primary and fund the congressional opposition to them as this process plays out.
So obviously the sabotage from the right will be the largest hurdle for President Trump, and this has been true over the last 10 years, although it seems like those hurdles are falling in pretty quick succession, especially with some of these Republicans united to support Tulsi, getting Pete Hegseth over the line. Kash Patel looks like he's cruising. What should become of USAID? It's now under Marco Rubio's purview. Marco Rubio, in a clip that we played before you came on, Mike, is saying this was a government outside of the federal government. This was not even an American organization. This was like an international globalist left-wing organization. Can USAID be saved? What would be your advice to a Marco Rubio and to an Elon Musk right now with USAID?
I just have to respond to that framing, because USAID overthrows leftist governments all the time, all the live long day. This is the problem. You have a right-wing nationalist government who does want influence over many leftist governments, as well as some right-wing nationalist governments. But this idea that framing it, if that's politically useful, whatever. I defer to people; they can say their own language on this. But as someone in the background of this, trying to help provide objective guidance on this, what you're gonna find is that a great example of this. I mentioned the overthrow of the democratically elected Bangladeshi government in September of this year. This is just 4 months ago. Sheikh Hasina, the democratically elected prime minister, was ousted in a coup that was led by the right-wing International Republican Institute at NED, also funded by a huge flood of USAID dollars. The Republicans were funding the transgender dance festivals. The Republicans were funding the woke DEI programs. The Republicans were funding Bangladeshi rap groups in order to write rap albums to get young people and student groups to take to the streets. They weren't doing that because they were woke. They were doing that because of Republican energy company interests in the region and how it redounds to the sponsors, the Chamber of Commerce stakeholders to USAID and NED, who are significantly Republican. And so my concern is that we've not dented this thing yet. We've dented its reputation. We've sent a massive symbolic shot across the bow in the same way that the Brexit referendum vote did. But it is going to be trench warfare, layer by layer by layer by layer. And the exact same operations may be carried out the exact same grants can simply be grafted over from USAID's democracy, rights, and governance to USAID's democracy, rights, and labor in the blink of an eye. USAID has matching institutions for matching bureaus for State Department bureaus. These things can just be, Control C, Control V, copy pasted directly into state. And you heard Marco Rubio even refer to the fact that many of these grants should be kept to the extent that they serve U.S. national interests. But that is a very broad brush. And, you cannot let off the gas on this for 1 second, or what looks like a triumphant moment now will go the same way that the course of Brexit did in the UK, resulting in the UK now being worse than ever under the total thumb of the UK Labour Party, who's arresting people for hitting the retweet button.
Yeah, so total abomination. Okay, so retweet, Twitter, Elon Musk, Chuck Schumer saying Elon Musk has no authority to be stepping in these organizations and doing oversight. Your response to that?
Well, Elon Musk is not doing anything on its own. You heard Donald Trump himself say that everything is being authorized and approved by Donald Trump himself. And in fact, Doge is not just some outside advisory group. They're now formally a part of the U.S. government. They've now occupied the White House digital office. This was a major event that got very little press, I feel. For 6 months now, everyone's been talking about Doge might be not powerful at all because it's not even going to be a part of the government. Well, now Doge is a part of the government. It has an office in the White House, and now they're saying it's too powerful. So this is the Goldilocks. The porridge is too cold and it's too hot. But the fact is the executive branch is authorized to do this, and now they're in the executive branch. So suck it.
AOC says Elon Musk just not smart. Just one.
Well, AOC started her career in USAID.
Yeah. Go down that rabbit hole, Mike. Just real fast.
Yeah. Yes. AOC's miracle career, where she was plucked, from one of a 10,000 person lottery to be the sponsored group of an NGO to make her way into Congress as just a bartender. Well, AOC, while she was at Boston University, was a participant in this highly political fast track program called, I believe it's called the Nyamin International Cultural Exchange Program. And this is, in the words of its own program, not your typical study abroad program, because it is a democracy promotion program parked out of Boston University, sponsored by USAID, and it is a political fast track that puts you directly in a sort of groomed position for international relations and foreign affairs job. In fact, one of AOC's cohorts and one of her classmates in that very same program became the head of USAID for the region. She was plucked, Benny, get this, she was plucked into Niger in 2009 at the absolute epicenter heart of a civil war, a military civil war that was happening in the region, where U.S. was already putting embargoes on the in-power government and organizing a military coup to oust that government, where they then would go on to write Niger's new constitution. And AOC was one of a small group of people who were descended on to liaise with the indigenous population there and put them basically into turn them into regime change activists. The only two courses in the study abroad program were social change and youth engagement activism. Basically, you could pick between teaching people how to overthrow their government or angering up the indigenous population for how to overthrow the government while the U.S. government was conducting an in-process regime change operation. And again, like I said, one of her classmates became the USAID ambassador to the region shortly thereafter.
So AOC is a USAID.
Liz Cheney started her career at USAID. It goes on and on and on. I call this the great USAID vortex of despair, which is that basically every major political and financial promoter of USAID is either directly on the take, indirectly on the take through one of the groups that they run, like Bill Kristol, or their sponsors and donors, their direct donors rely on it, like Jamie Raskin.
So AOC is a USAID plant.
Well, she's a USAID creation. I don't want to remove all agency because, think of it like a fellowship program. Many NGOs or many think tanks, they have fellowship programs where they bring you in, they teach you your ways, they connect you with mentors, the people who will open the doors for you throughout your political career. And as a fellow, you maintain relations with that organization and you do favors for the rest of your life. And this is how people make it in DC. They start in these incubator programs. They network with those people. They do favors for years. And so they are a trusted partner. They know when they nominate AOC to Congress, AOC is going to use her perch in Congress to keep the USAID money flowing because it was USAID who opened the door. So I don't want to go so far as to call it a plant or a cutout. But these are the how skids get greased in Washington. She's in network. She's in the club. She's a USAID network promoter, and what you find is that creates a massive conflict of interest when USAID is doing things that don't actually advance U.S. national interests, but advance the cloistered interests of that set because they've got their sponsors in Congress, like AOC.
So, Mike, I know we're up against a hard out, and I have a final question for you, and I think it sort of hits at the very heart of this issue because the people that you are seeing screaming in the streets, the rent-a-mobs that are back, you predicted it, Mike. You can set your watch by it, pal. The rent-a-mobs are back, and they're now protesting to keep USAID. I wasn't planning on this one. Maybe you were. How panicked right now is the corporatist Democrat Party in the reports that we're hearing? This is the single greatest victory that President Trump has ever achieved by cutting off the funding for USAID, and the sheer screeching and demonic screams about this. I mean, I haven't heard them like this since Kavanaugh, Mike. This is really something. I mean, this is really something. This is like Russiagate level of mobilization. How devastating is this when the funding gets cut off, and why is it that they were able to hide it for so long?
Well, what I'll say is you ain't seen nothing yet. If the screaming is loud now, just wait to see what's coming. Because the fact is USAID is not really actually, there's a funding pause, but USAID is fully funded through Q1, which means they still have the money that was dispersed through March 2025. So we're still a full month from them actually being hit by this funding pause. And so what they're doing right now is scrambling into action and building the consensus about the most twisted and sadistic path forward in order to stop that from happening, which is why I keep saying focus on the internationalist Republicans, because that is who they're going to run to Congress to stop this. It was the House, I believe it was the House Foreign Affairs Committee from their official X account who put out a formal tweet saying that Elon Musk can't do this. Well, guess what? It's Republicans running that Twitter account. There's a Republican majority. And my concern is in the same way that when the U.S. has historically gone into foreign countries in order to pull off a military coup, what they'll do is they'll back channel with a critical component, a critical quorum of military generals and get them to defect, that you're going to see the same thing with Democrats moving over to Republicans, offering them money, offering them favors in order to defect from Mike Johnson, defect from Donald Trump, defect from Elon, and move into a coalition bloc, a majority coalition bloc, in order to stop this from happening, in order to keep the funds flowing, or in order to make sure that the reforms that are put in at state effectively keep, what I'm indelicately calling the USAID herpes infection that it will inherit.
How deep does the rabbit hole go, Mike? In conclusion, what's next? Predict the future. You've done it a million times on this program. You're Benz Stradamus. I think we even have some graphics of you as Nostradamus. What will be found next here with
Well,
USAID?
yeah,
Where does the rabbit hole go?
Well, the rabbit hole is mind bending. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. What people will find is that they've been living their entire lives in a Truman Show, where every person they think that they've met or they think they know, or every institution they think they know is in either in large or in small part a USAID concoction, from the media to social media censorship algorithms, to prosecutors, to universities, to unions, to public health institutions, to coalitions within political parties, you name it. Every institution in society is inflected by the influence of USAID. What I'll say in my particular focus is restoring freedom on the internet, restoring freedom of speech online. And one of the main focuses of the investigative journalism work that I do over the next few months is going to be fully revealing the role of USAID in censoring the internet and in control over media, and as well the role of USAID in treasonously betraying the United States of America by working with foreign governments and paying and funding and pressuring and coordinating with foreign governments for them to pass internet censorship laws in order to devastate U.S. social media companies like X or Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook or YouTube, in order for USAID to be able to have control over what people can and can't say on the internet, which then determines the results of elections, which then determines the constitution of governments. And so that, to me, is an immediate issue that needs to be at the forefront of Americans' minds, and also has to be fully understood by American diplomats as they do battle with the European Union and its censorship laws, as they do battle with the UK and its censorship laws, as they do battle with Brazil and its censorship laws, battle with Australia and its censorship laws. Because what they're going to find is, as they're negotiating with foreign countries in terms of the rules of the road for the internet, they're going to find that the people on the other side of the table are not just foreign people and foreign governments. They're going to find members of their own USAID.
So they're negotiating against their own country. Their own country is undermining them on an international
a rogue
stage.
element.
Yes, that's
a
right.
rogue element of their own country. Yes,
the tax dollars that they pay go to their own undoing. It's so dark. It's so evil. Mike, I hope that you come back for regular segments. Everyone just freaking loved this, and I feel like we could do another 20 hours on it. And so, thank you, Mike, for your work on this. It's something that you've been, again, the man on the mountainside, in the wilderness, in the snowy, blizzardy wilderness. You've been calling about this and yelling about this, and you don't seem so crazy anymore, Mike. You actually seems like the only person that you actually seem like the only person who was right.
Danny, can I say one thing before we go?
Please.
Two things, actually. One is, we are still in the wilderness. Let me make this clear. We cannot make the mistake of what the Brits did when the Brexit referendum happened, and put all the energy into the campaign for the first thing, and then lay off the gas, and then suddenly it's almost worse than if it had never happened at all. There are many ways this can go sideways. Secondly, if you can please do me this favor, I know you just pulled up my X account at Mike Benz Cyber on screen.
Yeah, I don't know why
if you could go back to that and go to foundationforfreedomonline.com, and I'm going to show you exactly what to put on screen, because I want everybody to read this. Go to the search bar there and type in USAID, and pull up that first document right there. USAID internal documents reveal government plot to promote censorship initiatives. I consider this to be there's much more to the story than just this, but this is a really great window for your audience to understand USAID's vision for censorship of the internet, the role in coordinating advertiser boycotts, the role in explicitly targeting the Trump movement and domestic populists in Europe and around the world, their focus on what they call psychological inoculation, and essentially control over the psychology of people around the world. This is a huge report that I think you'll never see USAID the same way in terms of its connection to social media. So I just want to, I know we published that about a year ago, but it's still highly relevant, and I just want to make sure people know that it's there.
The wonderful thing about the internet is that even if you delete the USAID web pages, if you try and take down the X accounts of USAID, there's always a record of it. You can find out what USAID was doing. It all exists and it's all there. And you can also find people who were right. You can go back and you can watch clips. You can find people who were telling you the truth. And you can find people who were trying to lie to you. Mike Benz is one of those guys who's been telling you the truth for years. And it was a very, very lonely job 2 years ago when Mike started coming on our show. And now he may well be the single most correct man in all of media. That's why you must follow Mike, support his work, go to his website, and ensure that Mike has as much power as possible. Right here, Foundation for Freedom Online, 707,000 followers on X, well on his way to 1 million. Let's help him get there. Mike, Godspeed in the most important work possibly on the internet right now.
Well, Benny, thanks for seeing the vision in this, years ago, and you've really been at the forefront in terms of amplifying and making so much of this possible too. So, thank you. You're the man.
Godspeed, sir. It was the CIA cutting Mike's mic. It was there. You know it was. You know it. It always happens. We do a show like this. We're sitting here chuckling in the studio. It always happens when we do a show like this. Oh, suddenly our guest is going to lose their internet or lose their mic connection. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we had a connection to Mike Benz today for the better part of the last hour. And again, you feel like you barely even scratched the surface. The Trump lawfare, the vaccine mandates, the biolabs, the rent-a-mobs, AOC, Liz Cheney, the wholesale creation of politicians here in this country that have been totally astroturfed. Not a single thing about AOC makes sense. None of it. Why? She has tens of millions of social media followers. Why exactly? What has AOC created? What has she done? What accomplishment has she ever had? How did she run out of nowhere virtually and defeat a very powerful incumbent? It is all fake, as Mike Benz says, the Truman Show. And it might be uncomfortable and hard to process here. Yeah, here's AOC with nearly 13 million subs on X. Why is that exactly? It's almost as if there was a regime that was astroturfing these agents in order to sow chaos in our country. It's not authentic. It's not real. We deal inside of authentic, real communications with people on the internet all day long. We know when it's fake. This is Fugazi, ladies and gentlemen. And we're excited to see this entire clown world come collapsing down, ladies and gentlemen. Don't let debt collapse down around you. If you're feeling buried in credit card debt right now, personal loans or medical debt, go check out my friends at PDS Debt Solutions. PDS Debt Solutions will help you manage your debt, and they empower you to take control using their platform. They go beyond the numbers and understand your unique financial situation and craft a personalized plan just for you and your lifestyle. No more cookie-cutter solutions. There's no minimum credit card score required. You can get out of debt faster and start putting your money back where it belongs, in your own pocket. Get started today. Go to pdsdebt.com/Benny to complete your free debt assessment today and see what options are available for you. Every single day that you wait might cost you money, so get started right now. pdsdebtsolution.com/Benny. Take back control of your life today. pdsdebt.com/Benny. Terms and restrictions apply. All right, ladies and gentlemen, too much, frankly, to cover on a single show, but we've seen some incredible breakdowns of what we just talked about today. Here's an excellent one from Charles Payne on Fox News, explaining what actually is happening here with USAID, why this is so strange, and also why it's mainstream now. This is so important to get mainstream penetration into this topic that we've been talking about here on this program for years with Mike Benz. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are at scale. Here we go.
And these are just the numbers that we've cut in the, 10 days?
It's called a whirlwind.
And it's just getting started.
It is. Let's go through some of it. This is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Look how much we were spending. They had to cut almost 20 million. Department of Agriculture, Charles?
110 million. Office of Personnel Management, 500 million. USAID, obviously, this is the one that's in the news right now.
Right.
Over 200 million.
Because Elon shut it down.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Listen, all of these things ostensibly were designed for good reasons or good intentions, but then they become cover. You ever ask yourself, where do all these folks who work in these administrations go after the administration's ousted? How do they still live in mansions after they're out of government?
What's the answer?
Well, a lot of it is these NGOs. A lot of these NGOs operate things that are funded by USAID. And it's amazing. As we start to peel the layer of the onion, we're going to see people like, oh, I thought this person was a journalist. He's getting millions of dollars from taxpayers.
Right.
For what?
Right.
For what?
What exactly is this agency? What was it created to do?
Well, it was created to sort of represent America around the world and help other nations.
Humanitarian efforts.
It's aid. But again, it's like who decides what the aid is, who gets it, and by the way, who manages it? There's no accountability for it.
Right.
And so you've got to shut it down. It's become a beast. It does things that we're not supposed to do. So let's say Congress says, hey, we no longer want to do X, Y, Z in this country. USAID can fund an entity to do the same thing on behalf of special interests. So even though the government's not directly funding it, the taxpayers are still paying for it against the wishes of our Congress. It's really outlaw. It's become an outlaw industry.
I mean, people are waking up right now, getting ready to take their kids to school and go to their jobs. Hard-working Americans, they work for these tax dollars, and then we're wasting it on. Look at this. This is where we're sending money to other countries. Serbian LGBTQ rights group, they got $1.5 million. Electric vehicles for Vietnam, $2.5 million. South African transgender HIV research, $30 million. Uganda LGBTQ rights group, $4 million. And Egyptian tourism, $6 million. And I heard on Sean's show last night, we gave, according to Eric Schmidt, our senator, $20 million to Sesame Street shows in Iraq.
Yeah. And again, a lot of this is pushing an alternative agenda, right? And Uganda has their own government. They have their own people. They have their own say.
Right.
They may not want us pushing LGBTQ in their country, right? We're trying to force our values, or not. Sometimes it's not even our values. Sometimes it may be the values of special interests using taxpayer money. It has to stop.
We went way deeper than that on this program, and we're way more coordinated and sophisticated in how we went about this. The point of that clip is to show you that it's being now spoken about in the main. This is now being mainstreamed. This is a panic moment for those inside of our federal government who've been using USAID as a golden goose to fund the left wing in this country. It is my contention that you will watch the atomization of the left and their capacity to put up any resistance right now. And the reason why they've let Trump roll so hard is that they don't want to show Trump where the targets are. They want to plant that a year from now, or 2 years from now, or 3 years from now. But without any money, if you shut down the money spigot, then you end the actual system before it begins. It can't operate without these piles of cash, without these mountains of cash, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. This organ, USAID, has a larger budget than the CIA and the State Department combined. What does that tell you about its operational capacity? The smartest man inside of the administration that is currently at the White House every single day is Stephen Miller, the Deputy Chief of Staff. He's the architect of so many of President Trump's policies. And when he speaks on a subject, he speaks on it with authority. And declaratively, Stephen Miller and Elon Musk saying the same thing here, that USAID was operational as a government outside of the government, engaging in the usurping of and undermining of the American public. This is how you know that we are officially at the death knells of this organ, when Stephen Miller and Elon Musk are over the target. Here we go.
The president is at the apex of his powers when he's exercising the foreign policy of the United States. So he has plenary authority to carry out the foreign policy of the United States. So bureaucrats at USAID cannot interfere in the affairs of foreign countries to prop up regimes, to thwart America's interests, to facilitate mass illegal immigration, nor to facilitate diversity, equity, and inclusion policies which violate federal civil rights law. All this DEI BS violates the federal civil rights law of the United States. So the president is at the apex of authority here. Moreover, as you mentioned, Congress doesn't dictate to these agencies how to spend the money. Agencies exercise discretion on these grants, on these contracts. So take, for example, funding to these non-governmental organizations, NGOs, that fund open borders. So they funnel tens of billions of dollars to these open borders private sector orgs. Congress never passed a law giving those organizations that money. President Trump can not only pause all those funds, not only can the agencies pause those funds, but agencies can instead, if they wanted to, give those funds to organizations that support border security, that deport illegal aliens, that find criminal aliens, that provide detention for dangerous illegal immigrants in this country. There's no law passed by Congress that says that we have to funnel money to organizations that traffic children. Quite the opposite. These are crimes. Illegal immigration is a crime. DEI is a crime.
Funnel money to organizations that traffic children. Well, well, well. What is this, ladies and gentlemen? There's an entire documentary made about how USAID was instrumental in the trafficking of children throughout the country. The trailer for this documentary includes the guest that we had on our show, Mike Benz. And when I mention this will send chills down your spine, we didn't get to this topic with Mike Benz because I wanted to lay it bare for you here. USAID was, of course, the nexus point that funded the NGOs to bring all of the children and all of the human trafficking and all of the refuse into our country. Again, when I call it the heart of darkness, this is what I mean.
It was USAID that I fear much more than the CIA, because the USAID is how CIA gets shit done.
USAID is clearly in the job of trying to bring about regime change. It has secret bank accounts, shell companies.
USAID gets $50 billion a year in U.S. taxpayer money. That's a larger overt fund than the CIA has.
USAID perhaps is the new CIA.
Have we ever tried to meddle in other countries' elections?
Oh, probably.
This is not just about over there. This is about here.
They have a process, a system by which they destroy other nations. And they use that same process and system in order to destroy the United States.
It's a plot against our own people.
America, what if I told you that the United States government was acting like the world's Gestapo, using organizations like USAID under the pretense of humanitarian aid to topple governments, install politicians, and orchestrate regime changes in third world countries?
I disagree with that as somebody who has helped plan coup d'etat. Yeah. Not here, but, other places.
These are places that are practically entirely run at this point by the CIA and the U.S. State Department, which is, of course, a CIA front.
USAID provides most of the money.
This isn't a giveaway.
The State Department provides the policy vision.
This makes a difference to people's perception of us. Tricky endeavors, whether it's fighting terrorism,
Al-Shabaab groups in USAID camps,
or narcotics.
Joe Biden's State Department is commanding the Taliban to keep the opium flowing.
Or oppression or resistance to governance.
Those USAID trucks were stopped at the border to Venezuela with fully automatic weapons.
All of those things.
I don't think that's humanitarian aid.
What a difference that makes.
And if we stand for democracy anywhere, we have to stand for it everywhere, including in Guatemala.
Guatemala, what if I told you that USAID, the State Department, and the CIA created a fraudulent political party and then used that illegitimate party to rig the 2023 Guatemalan election so they could install a list of CIA-controlled politicians who would continue to allow them to run the world's largest child trafficking network out of Guatemala?
Nothing to do with that? Correlation, not causation?
That is absurd.
They didn't deny it, which means that they admitted it.
This is no question, a political shocker in Guatemala.
The U.S. government, the Biden administration, helped cover up voter fraud.
Why Guatemala? Why not some other country?
Guatemala is concerned about child trafficking, the NGOs that are trafficking the children.
Jill Biden was the chairman of the board of Save the Children.
You guys just raided Save the Children.
Guess who stepped in? The State Department, U.S. Embassy, and USAID. Another coincidence?
America, what if I told you that DHS, under the direct orders of Alejandro Mayorkas, would create a public-private partnership with Mexican cartels, and that HHS, under the direct orders of Xavier Becerra, would create a public-private partnership with NGOs like Save the Children and Southwest Key Programs. And in this quasi-public-private partnership, they would use your tax dollars to fund the world's largest international child trafficking operation.
As to whom we know where they are, that is outside the responsibility of the Department of Homeland Security.
This is nothing but lies. Nothing but lies.
Secretary Mayorkas, he acts like none of this ever happens.
It's his policies that caused over 500,000 of children being smuggled in this country.
And he also knew who to blame.
HHS places those children.
That's on you.
Was that a question to me? Are you familiar with the sponsors that utilize a strip club as an address?
You shrug your shoulders and then send another batch of kids out to sponsor.
Human trafficking bust at an egg farm. Federal prosecutors call it modern-day slavery.
Of course, we investigate cases of trafficking.
Another lie.
This individual's name is Ryan Mata. I'll put up the account right now. You can go ahead and check in on this documentary. I don't know Ryan, but I really liked that trailer. And is USAID responsible for the child trafficking ring that is the largest on earth? How deep does this all go? Diddy, Epstein, where are the children? Why are hundreds of thousands missing? What role did the U.S. government play in this? Where are the children? Bearing the lead here, I guess, on the program, ladies and gentlemen, maybe the most important question. Too many, like the giant whale carcass at the bottom of the ocean, it's too big for any one show to carve up. But we're going to do our job here, and this is going to be a recurring investigation for us at this program. The heart of darkness must be exposed, and the easiest way to expose it, obviously, is to shine light on it. It will burn, it will sear, and the cockroaches will run. Ladies and gentlemen, our Salt That Lid before the day, the cockroaches on MSNBC shrieking about Elon Musk. This is a supercut. It's very special to tell you that we are over the target. Why not end, ladies and gentlemen, today's show on a little bit of uplifting news with a Salt That Lib. Let's salt the salty libs on MSNBC.
Because what's happening right now is a hostile takeover of the U.S. government. There's no other way to describe it.
Over the past 2 weeks, which kind of feels like it's been 2 years, we have learned just how fragile our democracy is and how relatively easy it is for someone who's determined and really well-funded to steal and corrupt it. If you were going to write a playbook for how to steal a democracy in less than 20 days, it would sure look a lot like this.
Who has the nuclear codes? Think about it. The only answer to that question, the only honest answer to that question tonight, for the first time in history, is we don't know. We don't know who has the nuclear codes. We don't know who has what inside the Trump government. We don't know who is doing what inside the Trump government. But we do know they are doing things that have never been done before and that are illegal. We know that those things are not legal.
You have no power here, right? Yeah, the old Lord of the Rings, right? The King of Rohan. You have no power here. Can't do anything about it. They can't stand the shock and awe, which is what's happening right now in the administration. It's shock and awe, and they're helpless. This is why we're focusing on USAID. Is because I'm finally seeing them coalesce around something. I've been waiting, like, what was the target? What was the golden calf? What was the sacred cow? Trump's going after so many things so quickly, they didn't even put up a fight with like gendered bathrooms. They didn't put up a fight with DEI. I mean, a little squealing here and there, but like nothing. No full-scale walkouts, no mass media propaganda, no senators like screaming and raging and rampaging. What was going to be the thing? You know, when something's, you know, when something really is infected, you press on it. It hurts. You scream, right? There was something that Trump was going to hit and bear down on, and they were going to scream. And this is it. This is the skeleton key. This is over the target. So we ain't done with USAID yet. We're very happy to have sunk our teeth into it. We humbly present to you, ladies and gentlemen, all the evidence that we can find on these things. And we appreciate so very much your viewership of this show because it gives us outsized capacity to speak truth and to change this country, to uncover these things. Quite frankly, we're beating a lot of major traditional broadcast media. ALX, pop up, show stream charts from yesterday. I want to show you guys like what we're building here and why this is so important that you subscribe to this channel. You can support us in other ways. You can become members. You can go to the Benny Brigade and become a member, ladies and gentlemen, on our site. But this is our everyday. This is our everyday. Competing with Bloomberg, NBC News, ABC, CBS, CNN, and we're just destroying them. And so our capacity to do our own investigations, to do our own research, is locked and linked with the viewership of this program and our ability to speak the truth. It comes from you. And now we have this outsized power, and we're going to use it to protect children, to stop the biolabs, to prevent the next COVID-19, to end gender madness, to potentially cut off the funding spigot for the globalist left, which comes out of absolutely nowhere, and to stop the next AOC from being astroturfed, to potentially stop the next assassin of President Trump, or the next lawfare against you, me, our political movement. This is called offense, ladies and gentlemen. We've lived our entire lives on defense as a Republican Party. No. We're populists now. We're American nationalists. We go on offense to protect our country. That's what this entire show is about. We defend for our children our sacred American rights and rid ourselves of the cancer of an unelected government that exists wholly and totally outside of the United States Constitution, which puts you and me in charge of this nation, actually. And ultimately, over the expanse of time, the definitional democracy is that we, the majority, get what we want. That this country gets what it wants. And we want to end this left-wing globalist insanity that is so utterly perverse and so incredibly dark, unchristian, and against the values of humanity. And so we're just deeply and profoundly thankful for you allowing us to endeavor in that today and to go deep on these things. We're going to be doing a lot more of it, a lot more deep dive investigations, revealing and doing our own investigations and journalism. And we know that we'll have truth on our side because every single day we do the verse of the day. From Psalms 95, ladies and gentlemen, let us sing to the Lord. Let us shout joyfully to the rock of our salvation. I don't know if it was the CIA that cut Mike's mic today. I'm not sure. It's a fun joke that we have ongoing on the show whenever we have a audio issue. But I can tell you this, the reason why we can fearlessly attack subjects like this, and you heard Mike Benz say it, we've been doing it for years, far before it was ever mainstream, and when it could have potentially cost us really everything, was because we have the rock of our salvation. Because we base the program on truth that is immovable, and that gives us great confidence moving forward. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope it gives you confidence as you march today with us on to, well, making this a better country than we found it. And that's our major drive here. I'm honored to march with you. It's Benny. You can't defeat an army of happy warriors. Let's go win. See ya.
We really did have everything, didn't we? I mean, when you think about it.
What difference at this point does it make?
Where the truth gon' be, faith and freedom on your TV screen. Stand up strong, battle through the night. The Benny Show's here, bringing liberty to light. From the speeches to debates, Benny sharp like a blade, cutting through the lies, watch the truth cascade. With the warrior's heart, this man never fades. You know it's prime time when Benny invades. From saving the nation to stories untold, the Benny Show's a storm, see the truth unfold. Stay in the loop, let freedom take hold. Salting all the libs, soul never sold. It's the Benny Show, where the truth gon' be, faith and freedom on your TV screen. Stand up strong, battle through the night. The Benny Show's here, bringing liberty to light. Liberty to light, bringing liberty to light. Liberty to light, bringing liberty to life. From the speeches to debates, Benny sharp like a blade, cutting through the lies, watch the truth cascade. With the warrior's heart, this man never fades. You know it's prime time when Benny invades. From saving the nation to stories untold, the Benny Show's a storm, see the truth unfold. Stay in the loop, let freedom take hold. Salting all the libs, soul never sold. It's the Benny Show, where the truth gon' be, faith and freedom on your TV screen. Stand up strong, battle through the night. The Benny Show's here, bringing liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light.